Hey Perry, I know you had a very busy summer and went to a lot of math camps. So how was your experience?
Yeah, so this summer I was actually a participant in three different math camps, so I'll go over each of them briefly. So first I was at the Banff IMO Training Camp. So this camp was for the Team Canada to train for and prepare for the IMO in Australia this year. And I was invited as a student in addition to the IMO team so that we could kind of train for possibly for future years along with the IMO team. And so at Banff, we had classes specifically about kind of contest mathematics. And then every other day, we'd have a 4.5 hour mock day of the IMO, so with three problems. And so there was a lot of kind of mocks and problems to be done at Banff. And then on top of that, I was also a participant in SUMaC Online. And so that was a 2 week online course in abstract algebra and specifically like group theory. And so although this was online, it was still very interesting and had a lot of mathematical content. And then thirdly, I went to Yau Mathcamp in China. And so this was a month long in Shanghai. And this was really interesting because, well, first of all, it was in China. And then there was also a lot of different advanced mathematical content that was taught at the camp. They had a really wide variety of courses to choose from. And so I ended up taking linear algebra, geometry and topology, and analysis and number theory, all of which were really interesting courses.
There's also a IMO winter camp. So what's the difference between the Banff summer camp and the winter camp?
Uh, IMO summer camp is occurring right before the IMO, so like literally the 2 weeks leading up to the competition. And it's after the IMO team has been selected. So it's like really specifically for training for the IMO and like direct preparation, and like the classes and the mock tests are really, everything is made for the IMO team to be as prepared as possible. Whereas in winter camp, it's like more specifically for kind of a little bit of like selection for the IMO. So like it's used in some selection criteria for the CMO and the APMO. And it's like it's a little bit less intense, I would say. There are still some mock competitions, but I think a lot of it is more focused around meeting new people, and then the classes are probably a little bit more easygoing, I would say. So yeah, the summer camp is definitely more. There's a mock test every other day, 4.5 hours long. So the problems there, I think, are a lot harder, and yeah.
That sounds like a tough schedule, but also sounds like a decent amount of fun. So what was your most fun moment across all the camps?
That's a really good question. I guess there are definitely a few highlights that I would talk about. Maybe I'll talk about a little bit of each. So, I think I'll talk about for SUMaC Online. At the very end of camp, we had like a personal research project, and I think that was really fun because we could do kind of any topic somewhat related to the idea of like group theory or abstract algebra. So I think there was a lot of freedom as to what we could choose to do and what topic we could present to the class. And so I ended up doing my project about elliptic curves and cryptography. And it was a lot of fun to kind of research the topic and prepare a presentation around it. So yeah, that was really fun in SUMaC. And then for Yao, there was actually a lot of freedom associated with, even though it was like in China, but we had as students a lot of like freedom as to what we wanted to do with our time, especially on like weekends, because often in groups of students we would go on the Shanghai metro and like go to malls or go to restaurants or go to escape rooms. And so I found that kind of a lot of fun to get to know a lot of other people in China and then get to do some really fun activities with them.
Yeah, that sounds great. Would you say the elliptic curves was the most cool thing you learned this summer?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think it's close. I'm not sure if it's the most cool thing I learned this summer. Some of the classes I took at Yale were very, very like niche mathematics, but I found it really interesting. There was one class taught by a Russian professor it was analysis and number theory, and the topic of the class was on Diophantine approximation of like rational numbers, and so it was like a really crazy topic, but it turned out to be really interesting. So yeah, I think that's probably the coolest thing I learned this summer.
So one last question I had was, how was the application process like for SUMaC Online and Yau?
I think the application process for SUMaC was a lot more similar to the one you'd see for other camps, such as Ross, which James attended. So they have a problem set that you work on over the course of like a month or two, and then some essays and personal statements that you'd have to provide in addition. And then I think SUMaC asks more specifically for your extracurriculars, your activities, and perhaps your like scores in contests or in other like competitions or exams. And then for Yau, it's similar, but I think one special thing about Yau is that they have, even though they have mostly Chinese students at the camp, they also really love having like international and students from other countries come to the camp. I think out of 160 students at Yau, 40 some were from internationals, and so there were quite a few American students who I became pretty good friends with. But the application for international students is it asks for a lot of your achievements and contest results, and then also asks you to write, I think, 2 shorter essay pieces as well. Yeah. But that's kind of the overall application. So there's a problem set for SUMaC, and then just essays and achievements for both.